All right, so today we're going to break down this really powerful monologue from Australian media personality Erin Molan that, absolutely went viral. It's this speech where she just methodically builds an argument, and it all leads up to this one really stark question about good and evil on the streets of Australia. And that's the core question she puts to her listeners. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how she builds her case step by step to get to that really direct, really provocative challenge. And for her, it all starts with a high-profile visit. Okay, so first up, to really get what the speaker is arguing, we have to look at the context she sets up right from the very beginning. So the speaker, she frames the visit of the Israeli president not really as a political thing, but more as a humanitarian one. She makes a point of saying it was an official invitation from the prime minister, and it was all about showing respect. But, and this is crucial to her argument, she says the visit was really meant to comfort a community she describes as traumatized, especially after that horrible stabbing attack at Bondi Junction. Now, this visit, which she's just framed as this act of solidarity, well, it was met with a very different reaction on the streets. And that reaction, that becomes the absolute focal point of her entire monologue. So, according to the speaker, the second the Israeli president arrived, protests just erupted in the streets. And she portrays this not as some kind of political demonstration, but as a really aggressive and, in her view, inappropriate response, especially given why she says he was there in the first place. And yeah, the speaker, she does not hold back when it comes to how she describes the protesters. I mean, as you can see here, she calls them useful idiots who, in her words, have no brain, no heart. She straight up accuses them of protesting for Hamas and even calls them hypocrites for, as she sees it, ignoring human rights issues in other places. But in the middle of this whole protest, the speaker zooms in on one specific chant that she sees as the most important piece of the puzzle. For her, it all comes down to these three words: Globalize the Intifada. She argues that's the real key to understanding everything that happened. Okay, and you've got to pay attention here because this is a really crucial point. The term intifada has, a pretty complex history with a lot of different interpretations. But the speaker, she gives her audience one single unequivocal definition. For her, it means war, terror, death, and destruction. And that specific definition is absolutely essential to the moral weight she's about to place on that chant. Then, to really hammer home her point that this isn't just some fringe idea, she calls out a very prominent public figure, Grace Tame, who you might know as a prominent activist and a former Australian of the Year. The speaker uses her participation to argue that a really dangerous slogan is becoming normalized right there on Australian streets. And this brings us right to the core of her whole strategy, really. This is where she creates this incredibly powerful and very deliberate contrast between the two groups. And you can see her method laid out so clearly here. On one side, you have the protesters, who she's already defined with all those criticisms we just talked about. And on the other side, the Jewish community. And look at the words she uses: traumatized community, good law-abiding people. And she even paints this picture of them comforting a widow. It's a classic setup, right? A total binary opposition that's designed to give the viewer a really clear moral choice. To make that contrast even sharper, even more real, she tells this specific story. She says that after the president's speech, the Jewish attendees, those good, law-abiding people she just mentioned, they had to be kept inside. Why? Because she says the police couldn't guarantee they'd be safe if they tried to leave with the protesters right outside. And it's right at that moment, right after painting this picture, the aggressive chanters on the outside, the locked-in community on the inside, that she drops her central question. She poses it directly to the audience, framing it like it's the only possible conclusion you could draw from the evidence she's just laid out. Okay, so for the final section of her speech, the speaker makes a big pivot. She moves on from just describing the problem and starts demanding a solution. And she's not looking to politicians for it. She's looking to ordinary people. And here's how she does it. She makes the whole issue deeply personal. By asking this question, she's trying to shift the conversation away from just one specific protest and turn it into a question about the future of the entire country. She's challenging every single person watching to decide what kind of place they want to live in. So the really crucial thing to get here is this shift in responsibility she's proposing. She basically dismisses the protesters, saying what they do isn't what matters most. What really matters, she argues, is how the mainstream majority reacts. The power, she insists, is with everyday Australians. And her proposed solution? It's not about new laws or big counter-protests. It's much more grassroots, much more conversational. She's literally just urging her audience to take these small personal actions. Just talk to your friends, talk to your family, and just say, hey, that wasn't okay. And this quote pretty much perfectly summarizes her entire point. She's framing these small, individual conversations, just saying something wasn't right, not as some minor gesture, but as the single most powerful tool there is to stop the rot, as she puts it, and reclaim the country's values. And finally, to wrap it all up, she zooms out. She presents what happened in Sydney as a kind of warning sign for other Western countries. She actually suggests the UK is already further down this road and that the US isn't far behind. So in her view, what happened in Australia isn't just a local issue. It's a lesson for the whole world. But in the end, the speaker doesn't give her audience a nice, neat answer. She leaves them with this big, lingering, unresolved question about the future. After laying out her entire argument about good versus evil and about the power of just one person's voice, she ends by asking everyone to think about where this path ultimately leads. She leaves them with this question: where do we end up?